Now you're welcome along. Football show coming at you. Dan McDonnell here in studio. Hello.
Evening, Joe.
We have a Premier League feast before us, Stan. 48 minutes on the clock. Second half's just started. Chelsea against Liverpool is 0-0. Interesting Liverpool team in particular. We'll come to that in just a moment. Meanwhile, the other three games kicked off at 7:45. We're just past the hour mark. We have Bournemouth 0, Evan Ferguson's Brighton 1 with an Evan Ferguson goal. We have Leeds 2-1 up against Nottingham Forest. Very much relegation 6-pointer there. So Leeds 2, Nottingham Forest 1 is where we are. And Leicester minus Brendan Rodgers 1. Aston Villa going very well at the moment 1. Evan Ferguson's goal. What would we say?
Sweet.
Quality.
Sweet.
Yes.
Flick, I suppose you'd call it. I saw someone referring to it as a heel flick. I think it was one of the American sites. It's just instinctive. You know, I think that's what I like about it. I mean, I tweeted it out. Like, it's very similar to a goal he scored. His last goal for Bows. It's like, think about it now. Like, it's the winter 2020, closed doors, the darkness of the Belfield Bowl. But I remember in fairness to the FAI, they put the under-17 final on YouTube. And Evan Ferguson playing, Kevin Zeffy was playing for Shamrock Rovers, some other good players who were doing good things. And Evan Ferguson at that stage, I mean, like, God, that was 16 months or so after he played against Chelsea, yet he'd just turned 16. So, like, his name had been, it was as if it was, oh, look at this new guy. But even then, I think this is what's always excited people about Evan Ferguson, even back then before he left. You see, sometimes you put these young strikers in a bracket, like, he's incredibly quick. You know, you have this player who's incredibly quick, or in the case of a big lad, he's incredibly strong. And Evan Ferguson, I suppose, is the big lad, but he was the big lad, yes, with like great physical attributes, but also this ability to do the right thing and also to be very skillful. And just the confidence to try that and execute that and know that it's the right thing to do, you know. I mean, he's not even 19 till October. I mean, no,
in that context, it's very promising. I'm not ignoring you, by the way. I'm just watching it on loop here on my laptop. So it's a move down the left-hand side for Brighton. Bournemouth have lots of players in the box as Chelsea score. Looks like Kai Havertz. We'll watch the replay in a moment. Ball is played across the area. Plenty of Bournemouth players in the box. And it comes to Ferguson, who's maybe 8 yards out and somewhere between near post and middle of the goal. And super calmly, he uses the pace on the ball and flicks it into the far corner, helps it along, directs it into the far corner. I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from with instinctive, Dan, and it is instinctive. It's a very immediate weighing up of the circumstances, but I also think he's so relaxed doing it that he's weighted up very early on. It's both instinctive and quite considered. He knows where I am. He knows the pace on the ball is enough to get the flick on. It's not going to need much in terms of me adding to the speed of the ball. I'm just going to direct this. And he does it so calmly. And then, you know, he's never a kid. Kid, I say with affection. He doesn't lose his mind when he scores. He's just scored his 4th Premier League goal. It's a beautiful finish. Like, it reeks of just quality for all those reasons. His brain was quick. The execution was good. He's just trotting away. You know what I mean? It's like a slow jog. This isn't my moment. Oh my God, I've scored in the Premier League. It's I've scored again. And you can see the two teammates in the box both jump in the air at the finish because they know it's good and they didn't quite see it coming. So there's a whole lot of things to love about it. And I was saying to you during the news, look, we've all been very excited about Evan Ferguson for a while now. My sense of the English punditry class is that they're kind of saying, yeah, you know, promising player, good player. I hadn't seen Lineker. You'd mentioned Lineker was raving about him, but I think a moment like that is another eye-catching goal or two. They start to realise his age. I think he's about to start getting a lot of attention, Evan Ferguson.
Oh, I think he's getting it already. I disagreed with you a bit on the sense of you think they haven't really caught on to him yet. I mean,
it's not that they aren't aware of him. I'm just comparing it with. So I heard, for instance, one journalist asked about him on a podcast, and he was like, "Oh yeah, looks a good player," and that was the extent of it. So it wasn't, "Oh my God, have you seen this kid?" It wasn't, "This is like Michael Long, this is Robbie Fowler." But
that's journalists.
It wasn't the mania that comes with certain young talents. I'm not saying that they're right or wrong. I'm just saying that's my observation of the English football family at large. It's not like they're Evan Ferguson's incredible. I'm sure plenty of pros are looking at him and saying loads of quality there. But let's be realistic. It's not a Michael Owen, Robbie Fowler introduction either.
Oh, I think you're conscious of the green tinted glasses so much. You're getting to the point of I don't want to be Mr. Green tinted glasses here, so I'm going to completely pull back from it.
You should take them off.
No. You see, this thing, I'm not taking it back. But it depends. Like, I mean, you can talk about the opinion of one journalist or whatever who may not pay attention to Brighton that much. I'm just saying that I think I'd imagine within English football generally, within the corridors of every big club. And certainly contact I would have had from people working in English football. Like, I think everyone's talking about him in that sphere. Like, I think he is a big deal. And I don't know, I've heard plenty of commentary about it. Maybe you instinctively look out for it more, maybe you search him a bit more, but I think he's been highlighted. For a player of his age, he's been highlighted. It's been a nice package of the match of the day, a couple of like actually reminded me of the goal against Leicester. It's funny you're describing his goal there. Remember the header against Leicester, which again he cushioned it into the corner out of the reach of the goalkeeper, and there's almost a comparison there in a way that with a flick and with a header he's finding the spot. But no, I think I just think in the sense of some of the coverage around the Ireland-France game and some of the stuff in the UK that I would have encountered, it was suddenly Evan Ferguson centred.
Okay, I've missed it a touch.
Yeah, no, I think
anyone in particular?
No, I think it was. There's been the BBC. It was the BBC packages. I think it was Danny Murphy one time was speaking about him in good detail, and then
it was Murphy.
ESPN had a piece around them as well.
It was Murphy I had in my head whose tone was he's very promising, but not. I haven't seen the likes of this.
But I don't think. I don't think is that the nature of like punditry around Premier League young players now either. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, like when think of like an outstanding talent like Saka now. I think Saka is amazing, but I don't think when he came on the scene either, like people were screaming around. But I don't know what the accepted standard for wonder kid. People probably hadn't seen anything like Michael Owen before when he came along, because he was just like so exciting in the context of maybe where football was at that stage. Robbie Fowler, you mentioned off air as well, definitely helped her playing for Liverpool. But now, like, maybe our bar is higher, and maybe the hyperbole in terms of the over the top. I've never seen anything like this. Reactions is a little bit more measured. But I think Evan Ferguson, even to be identified and discussed and spoken about, packaged, picked out as a sort of a talent in what is what is now a much better Premier League, and he's just like casually leading the line for a top 6 to 8 team within it. It's exceptionally good. I feel like maybe you're hoping that there'd be more like clips of people completely losing their minds around it to sort of illustrate it. But there has been a lot of stuff about him, a lot of pieces around him in England. I mean, some of them were ludicrous because they're obviously suggesting he might in some way play for England, and like maybe that in itself highlights the mindset that maybe, and then maybe is more backing up your point in a way. Like, if it was a young English player doing that at 18, would there be a little bit more euphoria? But then England have so many exciting young players that maybe, Phil Foden and maybe just the bar is higher for the wonder kid. But I don't know, I think he's turning a lot of heads. And I mean, there has been the classic, the transfer speculation. I don't really know where it stands. I think he's been linked with all of the big clubs already. But there's definitely like substance to the interest from what I can gather. Like that there's people watching them in the France game, etc., etc.
Yeah, well, look, a goal like this again, for all the reasons we mentioned, just will copper fascinating people's minds who maybe haven't seen much of him. So the Kai Havertz goal has been disallowed because he tried to lift it over the goalkeeper. It came off Alisson and hit off Havertz's hand and went into the net. So 57 minutes on the clock, and it's still 0-0 at Stamford Bridge. I mentioned the Liverpool team was eye-catching. Van Dijk is ill, but Robertson on the bench, or certainly not playing. I don't know, is he on the bench? He is on the bench. Trent Alexander-Arnold on the bench as well, and Mo Salah on the bench. So not every day of the week that happens, not least for a game against Chelsea. It's Nunez, Firmino and Jota leading the line. The midfield is Henderson, Fabinho and Curtis Jones, and it's Gomez and Tsimikas at fullback with Matip and Kanade in the centre of defence. So who knows if that's a Jurgen Klopp lads, we're going through a tough time. I'm taking you out of the firing line. Have a rest. We have Arsenal, Anfield on Sunday. The league is beyond us. Champions League is beyond us. Let's just pause, take a breath. Or, Dan, if it's punishment. If it's a punishment substitution, or not even a punishment substitution, punishment dropping. You watched Liverpool City on Saturday. City were exceptionally good. Liverpool, obviously, less so, to say the least.
Yeah.
What's your read on what Klopp's done this evening?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I heard you say, the Champions League is gone, and I was just double checking the points there, and it's like, I mean, look, I felt like, I mean, maybe it's just a Newcastle win at the weekend and that sense of suddenly Newcastle jumping to third, and if Manchester United had won that game, like, it felt like Liverpool were closer to that discussion now, and it still feels like they could be in that discussion, albeit, as you mentioned, like, they play Arsenal at the weekend, and Chelsea away on paper is still, you'd still look at that and go, tough fixture, even though Chelsea are all over the place. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Liverpool, and we've probably spoken about them a couple of times here, like, are Liverpool back, and they have these like sparks where they look fantastic. I mean, the Salah goal on Saturday, the Grealish intercept at 1-0, like Liverpool playing on the counter and thinking, that amazing stat. I think I might have spoke about it here on Saturday. It flashed up on the screen that, like, I think it's about the last 36 Premier League games they've scored first. They'd won 33 and drawn the other 3, which is a sort of an insight into their attributes as a team that's like brilliant at counter-attacking, get ahead, draw the other team out, and you kill them. And it probably speaks to their quality in recent years that they've never lost a lead. That says how good they've been. And yet City just sort of, once they had that let off with Grealish coming back, to be fair, they sort of clinically picked them apart. And I think the point I would have made here with you before about Liverpool just not believing that they could have turned the corner is that a team that started games so badly this season with their application so bad in games at certain times, I'm not sure if you can get that back, in a space of time and even see it. Like, we'll never know. Like, I mean, things like the fullbacks being on the bench tonight, to me, would strike me more as seeking a reaction, unless we find out there's some sort of injury issue or whatever, would strike me more as seeking some kind of response or reaction, because some of the defending was just really poor. And maybe it's, reaction can be punishment, reaction could be confidence as well, as you mentioned, taking them out of the firing line, give other players a chance. But their season is sort of drifting away. It's a weird game tonight, this, really, Chelsea-Liverpool. It's like, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like this, was it the start of last season? I think I was in here on a Saturday afternoon, and Liverpool and Chelsea was at 5 o'clock, and I think Liverpool, Thomas Tuchel was the Chelsea manager, was sending off early on, and was like a real, I think it finished 0-0, but it was a really high quality, one of these gripping Premier League games that you have that really, like, it's absorbing in the classic sense. It wasn't goals, but it was like, yes, this is the best of football. And within a very short space of time, you're in a point looking at Chelsea, Liverpool, and it's like, well, this is the sort of the Premier League drift that teams can sort of embark into, this zone of, like, they're just sort of existing, and how do they, now they have the money in both cases, to be fair, to get it back pretty quickly, but you'd wonder.
The Chelsea team this evening, as they try and make sense of their 34-man and counting squad, is Wesley Fofana, Koulibaly and Cucurella as the 3 centre-backs, Reece James right wing-back, Ben Chilwell on the other side, and then a midfield 3 of Kante, Enzo Fernandez, Mateo Kovacic. Up front, a partnership of João Felix and Kai Havertz. Graham Potter, Dan, I'm curious for your thoughts on this general situation. 159 days, 31 games. His 11th defeat on Saturday was the end. The Chelsea hierarchy and Todd Bowley said enough was enough. Their holistic plans shelved. That's 2 managers sacked in the space of a year. They've spent about £600 million. Despite their promises to do things differently to Abramovich, it's sort of Chelsea on steroids at the moment.
Do you remember we had the chat before about Chelsea and the journey?
Yeah.
With Thomas Tuchel. I think you said it. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go on the journey here. And I mean, Chelsea 2.0 is just a slightly wackier version of the previous one. I mean, like, I have to be careful about this because I'm not on the London beat. So you're reading the reports coming out of there, but like some of the stuff coming out around Bowley and the takeover and their views on football is almost scarcely believable in the sense of, well, I mean, wasn't there a story during the rounds that they were a little bit unclear as to regards whether Chelsea would be in the Champions League next year? There was sort of a sense that you would always be in the Champions League.
As in, regardless of finishing.
Yeah, sort of. Now, listen, I'm wary of it, you know.
Has Todd Bowley phoned anyone to suggest goalkeepers take corners?
I'm thinking, I have covered Americans. But, I mean, speaking generally and stripping back from it, I think, like, the Chelsea thing, you always need this reminder covering football that just because it's the sport that, you know, it is the world's game.
Yeah.
You know, just because it's like the top end of it, like the Premier League level is like the pinnacle. Like in terms of a footballer, right? Like a footballer getting to the Premier League is in the like top 0.001%. They are the elite of the elite of the elite. Any of them, even some of these lads that we would slag off to play in the Premier League, like Jeff Hendrick played 6-7 years in the Premier League. Like that's an incredible achievement.
Yeah.
But you don't need that. You don't need to be the elite of the elite of the elite to get into a position of influence in the Premier League in another role. And like there's almost a sense of, you know, you sort of assume that people operating at that level are fully in control. And they may be brilliant in other aspects of life and very successful in other aspects of life. But when it comes to the business of running a football club, it can be run as chaotically as your lowest level team in some league anywhere in the world that's run very badly. It just so happens that the figures are greater and there's more people around you and there's more people surrounding you, but it's like chaotic. I mean, the recruitment strategy is mad. I feel sorry for Potter, I do. In saying that, I understand the point of view. I think Jamie Carragher and a few people have put out that it was the decision they had to make because if you feel like it's not going to work, you're better to change now or at the end of the season rather than 7 games into next year. I understand that. And it's easy to step back now and say, well, he was probably the wrong type of manager for the type of club they are. But what I find striking is that Chelsea were clearly aggressively briefing. They seem to have, again, I have to be careful, I'm not on the beat, but all the Chelsea reporters were very much like, there's patience with Potter, and they were like adamant. So like the club were like projecting an image of, no, we are stable, we are behind our man. There is a purpose to what we are doing here. But in reality, it's just been exposed as
I know.
It's not.
What I don't understand is, so they briefed heavily that this is different. This is going to be stable, logical, long term. And then they followed that up by getting a manager who fit that bill.
Yeah.
And therefore I thought, okay, this is a departure. And then, like I said, they behave like Abramovich on steroids. And so I don't understand how they bridge those two very different points in the spectrum. I mean, you go through the signings under Todd Bowley and it's 2 full screens on Match of the Day to go through all the signings. They put it up. I took pictures the other evening.
Oh, yeah. I saw that actually, yeah.
70 million. Cucurella, 55 million. These are all sterling. Raheem Sterling, 50 million. You sort of forget.
And it wasn't even done by order of fee. That was the thing. I initially thought it was by order of fee, but then like Enzo pops up on page 2, I think, doesn't he?
For 107 million sterling.
Yeah.
Koulibaly, 33 million. Chukwuemeka, he was 15 from Villa. Casady from Inter Milan, 12. I feel like I haven't seen him play. Slaninia from Chicago Fire, 12. Aubameyang from Barcelona was just a hilarious one.
He liked the Instagram post.
Enzo Fernandez, 106 million. Mudryk, who apparently the Chelsea players have nicknamed Draco Malfoy because Harry Potter, aka Graham Potter, wasn't picking Mudryk because he must be of Slytherin. If you're not a Harry Potter fan,
never watched, never read,
you don't need to know anything more than that. Suffice to say, the humour in dressing rooms has become a lot more PG in the last decade.
That's fine. Like, yeah.
On we go. Badashiel, 33 million. I'm sure some of these players will turn out to be good signings in good time, but it keeps going on. João Felix, Fofana, Santos
from Molde, yeah.
Gusto.
He played against Shamrock Rovers in the Europa League a couple of months ago.
So Todd Bowley has amassed 5.3 billion. He must be an intelligent man.
Of course.
Yeah. And yet, if I told you, genuinely, and I mean like respectfully to Bowley, if I told you like a moron had been put in charge of Chelsea, like just like an idiot is in charge, and this is how they've done things. They bought all those players, just total spree, no real striker, hired Graham Potter, fired him again, you'd say, yeah, you probably couldn't have done much of a more chaotic, worse job.
Absolutely.
But the key point is, if you're as smart as Bowley must be, or else me and you should really be billionaires. I mean, that I feel like a failure if he's managed to get 5.3.
What are we doing here?
The discrepancies in his approach are not complicated. Like, I feel a 3-minute cup of coffee to say, listen, Potter's that type of coach. You're buying just a load of players without much thought. That really won't work. Why don't you either buy a brilliant man manager type like a Carlo Ancelotti? Who's Carlo Ancelotti, says Todd. He's sort of like a, hands off, but he can manage egos type. He'll put some kind of shape on your mad spending spree. But he's more the type of manager you want. That Potter guy, he's more, methodical and slow progress, but very steady. I feel like that's a 5-minute conversation. That's not a big boardroom strategy.
Yeah.
That's not Todd Bowley saying, I don't understand what you mean. It's a really simple concept. It's staggering how misaligned coach and strategy was.
Oh, but even some of the briefing then was trying to suggest that certain decisions had been made by certain people in the level down below, and sharing it around, and it is completely misaligned. It's just like it's very hard to analyse it, and as I said, you always try and play the devil's advocate. Like, you always try and look at it and go, okay,
what are we missing?
Is there from some other position that we're missing some strategy here? The only thing that was potentially clever was symptomatic of like Premier League being sort of sick is the 8-year deals for the players. Like, Mudrick can go to sort of circumvent some of these damn regulations they put in the way. That was the only thing you could say. Well, okay, there's
jury seems to be out on how successful.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, as I said, I've got a plan. I've got a cunning plan. This does appear to be one of those.
I'm losing faith in this plan based on how it's all unfolding.
Like sometimes in time, like if Chelsea buy their way to a trophy in 12 to 18 months, is there a revisionism that says, well, actually, in hindsight, I can see what they did here. I'm pretty sure they will spin that somewhere. In fact, there was a vision behind this plan. No. Now, the money they have, and if they continue to keep churning it out, there's a possibility that eventually they will hit on something
if you
that
buy
works.
600 million worth of what and throw it at the wall, eventually you'll get something that looks pretty good.
Yeah, and you can sell it as being part of some kind of strategy, but you do wonder,
It's bizarre.
And also I don't know what type of personalities you're dealing with, but obviously Abramovich just was operated in a different world in many different ways.
Yeah.
Again, generalising, but you kind of wonder, American are getting a lot of press, a lot of coverage. Is he going to be more reactive to it? A lot of the stuff in January, actually, I just thought Chelsea in
9
January,
signings,
it's just the worst. But again, there was a breathlessness about how some of it was covered and how it was that, because there's nothing like the transfers are now what feed a lot of football fans. Just give us the hit of the next transfer, please. Yeah. The game is optional. I mean, if the game is fine, but more often than not, I'd like more transfers. If that could be arranged. More transfer speculation, more players coming in, and there was this real sense in the window that Chelsea were like, let's just give the people what they want.
Yeah.
Can you not see what we're doing here? We've bought this guy, it seems like a good idea to buy this guy. He's got potential. We'll take him.
It's insanity. Just a last question after taking out a break. I'm curious as to how damaged you think the Potter brand is. On the one hand, in his favour, you would like to think that any discerning football owner could look at the job he did at Brighton and could see the chaos that was Chelsea and would think there's still a lot there. On the other hand, there's been so much talk about how he was overwhelmed by the scale of this job. He didn't have the ego, he didn't have the personality, he never got to grips with it, and his ceiling has been shown. And even Danny Murphy in Match of the Day said, just watch Chelsea, I'm just starting to think maybe he's not like a front foot manager like a big club where they have to win games. Maybe he's more of a coach who sets up a lesser team to beat a bigger team, and that's his real skill. And Chapman sort of challenged him on that, and he said, it's just a hunch, I'm just getting that vibe. And everyone's got that kind of vibe over Potter, that he's not quite at this level. So where is he, do you think, in the pecking order now of Premier League job offers?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I did see some of the coverage about Potter. It's like, yeah, he's just, he's not an elite manager yet. Didn't get that coverage when Lampard left Chelsea, funnily enough. Didn't
have Frank's personality.
And like, he doesn't have the ex-player teammate on the couch, here, and that's always that element of someone, you're a little bit of an outsider because you weren't really a top player, mate. There's an element of that. He is damaged. But I guess you have to step back from it and go, like, how would Eddie Howe have fared in Chelsea? Would he have been fine with it? Like, he's coped with a situation in Newcastle where, in fact, disgusting project in many ways, but it seems like the club itself is reasonably sane in terms of how they've done their recruitment.
Yes.
And a lot of things. And like, would Potter have thrived in that environment? Possibly. Would he then be pushing for Champions League? And like, I think maybe one problem that probably does exist for Potter is how well De Zerbi has done. I think that is possibly more of or as much of an issue in a way as his own struggles at Chelsea. But I reckon, I don't know how soon he'll jump back in. Like, I mean, he did. I mean, I must say, like, he was sort of being a little bit sort of flippant in a way, about some of the Chelsea madness. Like, at one point he did speak, about like his mental health was being affected by this, and you can imagine, like, you've gone from a position, like we talk about, the young footballers who know nothing but fame and success, and everyone telling them they're brilliant until they have their first disappointment and it all turns and they can't cope with it. Now, I suppose the manager who comes to prominence in a different way, it's a different type, like your trajectory is all positive, and then all of a sudden you're exposed to this and it's probably very overwhelming. But I would imagine the best thing to do would be to take a little bit of a step back, but I'm pretty sure, his next club, once it seems to be a good fit, he'll be fine. Although, again, I mean, I know we have to go through a break, but I mean, the Premier League at the moment, like, 13 managerial changes this season, like, it's gone so showbiz now that maybe Chelsea are just a proper reflection of it now, that nothing lasts forever. And after Klopp and Pep and wherever they leave, what is the longest managerial dynasty of any description you will get? Arteta, maybe the top clubs will have long-term managers, but the basket cases and the lesser ones just chop and change every 6-12 months.
It's still 0-0 at Stamford Bridge, 75 minutes on the clock. In the second half, Chelsea had 4 shots to Liverpool's 1. Mo Salah is on from the bench. Elsewhere, we're in added time, and it's Leicester 1, Aston Villa 2. We have Leeds 2-1 up against Nottingham Forest, and Evan Ferguson's beautiful goal, which we were discussing earlier on, has Brighton 1-0 up against Bournemouth away, 88 minutes on the clock. Back in just one moment, and the football show, as ever, is with thanks to Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Now you're welcome back. Dan, let's pick up the pace. We've lots to get to here. We're not getting through it quickly enough. Everton Spurs last night.
Harry Kane. I heard you discussing it earlier on. The difference between cheating and what was...
being a pro.
Being a pro. I think your gamesmanship is the word in between the two. That's what you're lacking.
You're a man of words.
But I wanted to ask you, like, say, controversy around someone like Patrick Reed in golf.
Self-policing sport, completely different, but go on.
But is that just like, is it just playing the game? Like, if you take a drop, is it just...
I think it's not.
Well, come on. Is it, what about the golfers who look for a second drop? Sometimes they take their first drop, and then you see them sort of, what's that called?
Being a pro.
Being a pro, is it? Yeah.
Bending the rules.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
this, by the way, I know you didn't get a chance to see it, so
not the whole game. No.
This was an irritatingly awful football match. I mean, the two sides, for different reasons, are a disgrace. Like an absolute disgrace. I found myself watching the second half very closely and getting irritated how bad it was.
Really?
Like, actively. I think we've just become so spoilt. The football is so good. Like Man City, I just found like such a pleasure to watch. I could appreciate what was going on with Newcastle, Manchester United, as bad as United were. Like you could sort of see real merit in Newcastle, but honestly, the lack of respect for the ball, the lack of quality. Spurs is like hubris / laziness. Everton's just woeful quality. I like just booting the ball away, just like I found myself as just the ball ricocheted around at one point saying, why am I watching
You're not
this?
with me, and these lads all been the elite of the elite of the elite now. You're not with me now.
And it was in that context that I was like, this is garbage. Like, it was just really bad. I found, like, so Everton, I would sort of forgive Everton their awfulness because of the predicament that they're in. They are what they are. But Spurs, like, I found for Spurs offensively bad.
Are you maybe just a little bit spoiled? This seems like more of a personal attack. It's not.
Yeah.
Are you not more spoiled by watching a lot of good football?
No.
Whereas actually, in reality, most football is a version of this.
This was unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. This was like chronic. I mean, the two sides. Spurs should be ashamed of themselves.
Are you talking like shouldn't collect their wages?
Yeah, like really
hand
just
it back.
Not trying. You know the way.
Were the crowd offended?
No, because the crowd were very invested in, like, Everton, the Goodison crowd don't have the luxury of standards.
If you were invested in it, do you think you might have viewed it differently? If you were like an Everton fan baying just for your team to stay up by any means possible?
Yeah, totally. That's what I mean. They don't have the luxury to be picky right now. It's like, let's get a result. Let's get out of this mess. So I sort of think and there was a work ethic about Everton. Where Spurs,
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
If I would love more than anyone to have watched the match with Antonio Conte, because I'd say he just would have been this. This is what I'm talking about. They're the worst. They are shocking, actually. Anyway, then the Kane thing happened. I had no problem with him going down. Like, obviously it's embarrassing, but I just think that's the game. You know. Here's I might get your take in a moment. Your hot take. Here is Neville and Carragher afterwards in Monday Night Football. They disagreed.
My problem is I've got no problem with people diving or trying to win a penalty and people might say, well, what's the difference? The thing I really don't like is players trying to get fellow professionals booked or sent off. I've got no problem with someone going down, winning a free kick, jumping back up and getting on the feet. And to be honest, I'm having a go over a Tottenham player, but there's an Everton player, Richarlison, all the Everton supporters last few years, you're always on at Richarlison, because not the fact that he goes down, he stays down rolling down when there's nothing wrong with him. Harry Kane has gone down. You're trying to tell me he can't stay on his feet. Is that enough to make you go down?
Cara, I feel like you're rewriting history here. You were a horrible defender who used every single dark art that was available and wanted your players in your team. You appealed for every decision more than anybody else that ever played. And if your strikers went down, you wanted them. If your strikers went down, you'd want him sent off, and you'd probably have a go at him if he didn't.
I wouldn't.
Now you're talking as the pundit with a suit on a Monday night. It's fine.
It's a better suit than that.
I thought it's all right, actually. But to be fair, on a serious note, as a player, if we go in our dressing rooms, we're going, Harry, well done. You got him sent off.
Would you do it?
No, I've never done.
Well, why wouldn't you do it?
I've never done it. Because to be fair, I wouldn't do that.
Why?
But
why not? That's what I'm saying.
I wouldn't mind my striker doing it.
Yes, but you wouldn't do it.
No, I wouldn't do it. But
and if your son was playing football, how would you feel if he'd done it?
Well, to be fair, my point is, I can understand that.
Final word on this.
No, I'm giving Harry the benefit of the doubt. Maybe because I know him, and he does dive. Don't get me wrong, he does. He does go to ground, and he's clever. But my point is, when those nails go in your eye, honestly, that can shock you. Which is where we started with this conversation.
We're not going to find agreement, so let's move on to some of the other incidents.
Imagine being out on a Saturday night with your wife.
She did that to you?
No, yeah, and someone did that to you, and you were on the floor rolling round.
Right, come on, let's have a look at the other incidents.
I had that weird experience of agreeing with whoever was talking.
You're just like a chameleon.
But I really do see the merit in both arguments.
Well, I think the point is, and it's probably why the fact that it's Harry Kane is the England captain. Like, you can see him afterwards on the pitch, trying to like have a chat with Pickford and then Coleman as well. And it's players of a certain status who like engage in extreme gamesmanship, or whatever you want to call it. It's like Henri doing the diplomatic thing with Richard Dunn post Paris in 2009. They've got a reputation to protect.
Yes.
They've got a brand to protect. If that is unnamed 21-year-old French footballer who does that, they may not go to the effort of doing all that afterwards, but they'll probably be more roundly condemned.
Or not at all, almost, because their profile.
Sorry. Or there's a sense of, well, this is the game's gone,
That's
isn't it?
the game. And come here, do you think there's any sense? So Kane, and I hadn't considered Neville's point. It can be a bit shocking if you get nails in the eyes. Who knows if that happened?
Not to dive around on the ground, sure. I mean, I don't want to practice
it. Doesn't fully excuse it. But do you think there's any degree of Kane in the moment instinctive. My years of training here tell me I hit the deck when this happens, but that afterwards, on reflection, he's probably potentially a touch embarrassed, hence over to Coleman, over to Pickford, and look, lads, all is fair, love and war, sorry, but like fingers in my face, you know. Do you think he's a touch embarrassed? Maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'd like to know what Coleman said. Like, he clearly was seeking out Coleman. I mean, I can't imagine like Coleman was inquiring about his well-being at the time. Like, I mean, this is the thing, and being Seamus Coleman, who's probably I think he's a football emerita type of fella. I think he's unlikely to ever go into detail about what he said. Yeah. But I'd imagine it was something that Kane probably felt the need to challenge, not angrily, but more. Oh no, I'm not that type of. You've got me all wrong here.
Do you know?
Or do footballers just coldly go, listen, I know the game.
That's
you know
the
the
point.
game.
See, I was watching
to
it
a
with someone
point.
who's not a football fan, and the sense was, oh my God, that's embarrassing. And it is embarrassing, and so you could say it is gamesmanship and it is cheating. But I think that's to ignore the currency of the game. That's to ignore the context of the game. And within the game, that is not cheating. That is just the cost of doing business. That is a norm. Like you asked about Patrick Reed, that is not a norm. To cheat in golf, not talking about Patrick Reed specifically here before we're part of that $1 billion lawsuit.
No.
To cheat in golf is not the norm. To cheat in football or to do what Kane did is the norm. And therefore,
to improve your position.
I don't think it's an outrage. I don't think it's oh, come on, this is a disgrace. No, I think that is the cost of doing business, and that is the environment in which he's part of. So I think to suddenly do... I really agreed with Neville when he said, Jamie, now you're in your suit and come on, you know what you were like as a player. You know what it's like out there. I thought that was the salient point.
Yeah.
So like, who is anyone in football really to say with Harry Kane, I'm pearl clutch? I just can't believe I've seen Harry Kane do that. It's an outrage. Come on.
Well, the thing is, like, surely the point is, with VAR now,
you don't need to.
Like, if he just reacted in the natural, if it's true that he did get a nail in the eye, well, then I can imagine you would go away and go, God, and draw attention to it.
He's a pre-VAR man. He was schooled in the days where
he's old school.
Yeah, he had to go down.
He's old school cheating.
Yeah. So maybe we were wondering on the news round, would the newer generation in the VAR who've always had VAR to rely on, they don't have to go down anymore. Maybe it will stop.
It's just like, pointing to like a sort of an imaginary camera in the distance when they feel pain. Oh, yeah, I'm not so sure.
It was definitely caught the imagination. Come here, I wanted to ask you, because not everyone listening down would have watched PSG Lille at the weekend.
No, I mean, you were asking before I came in, like, what games I'd watched, and like, I was just walking in, I hadn't seen some of the games and had seen others. Then I was like, I completely forgot that classic thing that when you have when you do have the sport channels, trying to get some value for money for them to flick around what's on them. I did manage to. I saw PSG. I was sort of half watching the golf on Sunday, and I saw PSG 1-0 down, half an hour to go against Lille.
What channel is Ligue 1?
It was on BT3 I think it was. Yeah. Okay. And I just checking the scoring apps. I thought half an hour to go.
Yeah.
PSG are 1-0 down at home to Lille. This could be pretty good. Looked at the teams, like, all right, Mbappe, Messi.
Yeah, okay.
I like watching the sort of good teams chasing a lead. That's often a thrilling scenario. Is they're going to completely step it up here and go for it. Oh my God, they were dreadfully bad.
What did it finish?
It finished 1-0
to Lille.
And I mean, I'd like to say it was a siege. It was not a siege at all.
A different shrug.
And the thing about the PSG is there was an incredible atmosphere, because they have a real passionate fan base, actually quite a divided fan base, sort of, so there was just like this smoke and flares and, a real sense of there was this noise, but the game itself wasn't providing any. They brought a couple of younger players on who brought a bit of spark. Lille actually did look to be playing a back five. From what I saw, and Mbappe, I was like thinking, have they watched Ireland neutralise Mbappe here, and just decided I want to see what Mbappe's XG was for shots in that game or something, because he won a corner or two, but he was completely sort of drifting away, not involved. Messi, listen. Messi on a good day walks around as much as he walks around on a bad day. Okay, so I'm not gonna. It's a very old school. And he was only strolling around the place, but he was only strolling around the place. And it was just for a team. Maybe it's a team that knows they're going to win the league.
I was just going to say, for context, they're 6 points clear. They've lost their last two in a row.
They were awful though, like just really bad. I was thinking of like the football tourists who
Everton Spurs bad is what you're saying.
Yeah, this is true. Like, I mean, they should be. It was unacceptable. But I mean, Lille's application was very good. But no, it was just more a sense of wow, because I know people. I'm sure people listening and people listening may have done it themselves. Like, they have this whole thing of want to go and see Messi play in the flesh, and like probably part of the thing of getting these players just as sort of a vanity thing for Qatar, but probably there's an element of make PSG a place you want to go. I'm thinking if you've gone to watch, this is your big Sunday to go and watch the lads, and this is like particularly disparagingly.
They have lost 7 matches in all competitions this calendar year. 7 PSG, and the reporting now is that Messi is out of there. So the whole thing, whether it's Inter Miami or whether he ends up in Saudi Arabia or elsewhere, who knows? But
back to Barcelona.
The whole thing has completely fallen apart.
I was watching it going, and maybe it's because we've had Mbappe on the mind for the last sort of couple of months, and from an Irish perspective, and you watch him against Holland, and he's the captain, and it's like he's doing the press conference, and it's like, and then you realise, well, this is actually your day-to-day here at the moment when you're out of the Champions League, and you're sort of thinking going, I know he's got the contract and I know he's got this position of power and all this, but surely he's just going to get out of there.
Yeah,
he's going to make it happen because, like, again, I'm very conscious just watching one game, but I mean, as you mentioned, their form has been indifferent. Didn't even win the league, like last year, and was it last year or the year before? And but there is a sense of, like your legacy is going to be damaged by spending a lot of time here. And the World Cup has just shown how thrilling he is. He's the best player in the world probably to watch now in full flow, and you're watching him here going through the motions.
Interesting. I was going to talk Newcastle and Manchester United. We don't have time for that. Tell me about this Damien Duff viral, I suppose, ultimately critique of referees. If people haven't seen it, it's generally available, but he was talking effusively about the league. Standards are going through the roof. The crowds are brilliant. I'm not just talking about here at Shelbourne. There are sellouts right across the board. Playing standards going up. Referees have to come with us.
Yeah,
the referees have to come with us.
It was a really dramatic point. And he actually,
in the rain,
he held his hand up in the air to imagine this is the bar.
Yeah. We're
here now. We're getting here. Referees, get with us.
And he held his hand, I would say, well above the forehead area.
Yeah. It had many thousand views by Friday night. For context, this was after Shels lost 1-0 to Derry last week. Paddy Barrett, the Shels defender, got a second yellow at the start of the second half. Shels were 1-0 down. It sort of killed the game. And that was the context for the discussion. It did appear to be a harsh second yellow. It wasn't exactly mad appeals from players for it. And I was at the Dundalk Shamrock Rovers last Friday, where again there was a controversial sending off. Robbie Benson, Dundalk appealed it, didn't get away with it. It's been a big talking point this year. In some ways, I make this point, sometimes referees can be a boring talking point, because it's like, well, people make bad decisions, but within the league in recent years, it comes up all the time, again and again.
And to your eye, as a less emotionally invested spectator, is the standard of the refereeing eye-catchingly poor?
The panel has probably been drained in recent years. I wouldn't say it's high level. We don't necessarily have refs making waves in Europe relative to, say, Alan Kelly was there in previous years, went to the MLS. I did a piece a couple of weeks back about the high number of yellow cards this year, and within that I would have spoken off the record, because referees can't speak on the record. I would have spoken to people in the refereeing community who would say,
like who?
They would acknowledge that probably they're going through a transition at the moment. The levels aren't great, and also there's more assessment of the referees. They've brought in this new technology this year from this company in Estonia, that they're assessing games every week and decisions, and basically refs feel under pressure to give yellow cards,
because by the book.
If you don't give a yellow for an obvious yellow offence, this might be popped in for assessment, and you might be taken off games, and
the room for interpretation maybe.
Yeah, average of 5 yellows per game in the Premier Division so far this year. In the
Premier League?
3.7. So
what's 1.3 cards
across the season it adds up.
But is it affecting the spectacle?
Yes. Well, the two games. Well, put it like this: like the two games I was at last week. So the game I was at on Friday and the Shels day when I watched afterwards on TV, both of them were affected and marred by refereeing decisions. Now, you can debate them. There's across the season, it's been a big talking point. You talk to people in football, and they will bring it up. Sometimes, yeah, like it's boring. Like it can be a cushion just to blame the referees for everything, right? I'm not saying that. They probably need help. They probably need, like, you know, better training, you know, better pay in some cases, you know, like more time to devote to it. They would have their own issues in their world, and they have had their own issues in that regard. So it's not just a pile-on.
There is a legitimate.
But Damien Duff, funny this,
made.
most people in the league seem to disagree with most of Damien Duff's comments, but actually in this instance, it seems like everyone was agreeing with him. That's rare.
Well, I mean, come on.
That's rare.
Do you know what else he should say as well? Politicians are rubbish too. I mean, referees.
People like that. And listen, he was saying, listen, the standards are great.
Populist much. The fans are great. Not just the fans. Referees though, we don't like referees.
Yeah, no.
I mean,
it is the playbook of populism. I see what you're saying, but I think, look, you know, within the refereeing fraternity, even they would acknowledge, like, the things need to improve.
Okay, but
that's you know, relations between managers and players and refs as well, communication. There seems to be a lot to address. I'd love the refs to be allowed to speak more. They can't. I know that that's a general thing in other leagues as well, but I think maybe here, smaller league, even that would help to hear the voices and the decisions, and might just help in some ways to give it a little bit more context for explaining where they're coming from at times.
Okay, that's very fair. So we're into 95th minute at Stamford Bridge. I think it's a suitably drab, nobody feels great, nobody feels awful, 0-0 draw between Chelsea and Liverpool. It's like a perfect synopsis of where things are at the moment. Even the faces as they shake hands are a bit like, ugh. One game closer to the end of the season, guys. Leicester City beaten by Aston Villa 2-1. Late Villa goal there to win that. Away from home as well, so that's a very good 3 points for Aston Villa, who are flying high. It was Traore with the goal in the 87th minute.
Look at Leicester now, like second from bottom. You get rid of the manager, you look for the bounce. That's the whole thing. You know, the whole logic is the bounce. And now you're sort of thinking, Leicester, pretty solid club. Could have been the Champions League year or two ago, and now they are properly in bother.
Leeds 2-1 winners against Nottingham Forest, and Evan Ferguson's Brighton 2-0 winners. Ferguson with the first and Xisco with the second. We were talking at length about the Ferguson goal. A beauty to kick things off for Brighton. Football show brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.